Hello, this is Tamara Caulder Richardson. Some people know me as the Southern Belle Medium, and welcome to the Seeking Heaven, the Near-Death Experience and Other Phenomena channel. And today we have a very special guest, a near-death experiencer that has gone through, I'll let him tell you, an experience to a food reaction and went through this whole trauma of not being able to breathe, and then he had this near-death experience, and he is developing and growing, and he's quite an interesting speaker. And I want to introduce Chris Kito. So here we are. Welcome.
Hi, Tamara. Thank you for having me.
You're absolutely. We've been trying to get this thing going for some time, texting, and I feel like I have a new texting buddy. And then you've been so patient with me, and then you've been doing interviews, and I have. So here we are. It's funny, when we got on, I said, I'm actually a real person. And so finally we get together, and I heard your story on another channel or at some point, and I was really touched by it. And I thought that, you know, we have a lot of people that watch, as far as the people on my channel, they're interested in near-death experiencers. I think they will have the question, that's why I call Seeking Heaven. We're all trying to, like, you know, something better, something more, but what not only the experience in terms of what you went through, and then how you as a person persevered, and the obstacles you had to overcome, but also, you know, in between, what is your cognition of the afterlife? How did that affect you mentally, spiritually? And then, because people are trying to, you know, get answers, and then we'll go through and we'll wrap up some of these, you know, integrations, afterlife, and just have a chat. And you know, hopefully spread some wisdom to the people watching. So
Absolutely.
What about we just jump in and
for a conversation?
Say that again?
I'm here for the conversation.
Absolutely. So, you know, just so they kind of have, you know, I know you've done several of these on your near-death experience, but again, I don't want to slight you, and people really do want to know. So I thought you could go into that, and then from there as the basis. Now, if you also want to mention at some point, you know, any spiritually transformative experiences before or after that, that's great too. So anything you share is valued and held sacred. So go ahead and take the floor, and then we'll just have fun with this.
Absolutely. Thank you again. And, you know, it's always difficult scheduling during the holidays and whatnot that's going on. But as you just mentioned, I had a near-death experience roughly 8.5 years ago. And this is something I only started speaking about this year. I did a video with a French filmmaker, Anthony Chen, last October. That was published in March. And that was the first time I fully described and spoke about my near-death experience and the integration afterwards. There were several moments within several years of having my NDE at local IANS chapters where I would attempt to speak about the experience, and I really wasn't able to. I was still heavy integrating. I was processing. I really only went through about half the story, and I did not have the words or really the ability to speak about it like I do now. And I'm still, every time I speak and evolve through this, it gets a little bit, in some ways, easier to process and verbalize and make sense and put together the story. And I'm still very much integrating the NDE experience, which we can go into in this interview.
Absolutely. And also I want to kind of stop right there for people listening, because I'm sure that people have questions. And maybe we should address the fact, like, why it may be difficult to come out. And you can say what you think, I'll tell you, but I don't know if people get that it's really hard to come out with this.
Yeah, so, you know, I was very fortunate in my upbringing and community and where I lived, that I was never an external factor of not being able to discuss my near-death experience. For example, you know, if I grew up in a very religious household, I've heard other NDEers have experienced, you know, where they were not comfortable, or those ideas or thoughts were not welcomed. I was fortunate. I did not have that. It was an issue. It was an internal situation where I was not able to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it. I was still processing. People around me knew I had a near-death experience to some extent. They knew I had a event, an anaphylactic reaction to a food allergy. And in some cases over the years, people would ask for more details and I would not discuss it. I wouldn't talk about it. And I kind of shut it down very quickly. Again, really took about 8.5 years for me to openly discuss my near-death experience. And even then, it still has its challenges and energy and intensity when I do discuss it. And, a lot of that is, it was a very traumatic event. It was, some NDEs are very violent. They're traumatic.
Right.
They're intense. And the journey was not always, rainbows and unicorns. And as I always say, an Oprah moment. There were many challenges, and it was very difficult. And still to this very moment, coming up on almost 9 years, still dealing with a lot of that and sorting through and integrating. So there's a lot to take on, and every NDE is different, and everyone integrates and has a different experience and community around them for that.
Yeah, and to tag on to that, I also think that despite how difficult or whatever, there are moments in it that are eye-opening, and that I find that a lot of near-death experiencers, including myself, feel is sacred. So we don't really want to be invalidated by someone. And then when you start coming out and people go, it's okay, then you're like, oh, okay. And then you feel more comfortable, more supported to be able to come out. And this is actually looked at in the medical community as a phenomenon.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because that is a major truth. I had my near-death experience in Los Angeles. So I was in a very conscious community. I was living in Santa Monica, right on the Venice border, which is, full of goddesses and crystal shops. So I had really a great local environment around, and I didn't have any entrappings from my family or anything like that of being able to discuss. I just didn't discuss it with them. Not that I couldn't, I just didn't want to, and still to this moment it doesn't come up. But I was very fortunate, and maybe that's just being younger or growing up in New York. I was never really concerned what other people thought. It was my experience. If someone doesn't agree with that or thinks it's wrong or made up or whatever, insane idea they come up with, that's absolutely fine. It's none of my business what they think. And, I'm centered around, my belief in what happened and speaking to people that want to hear a story that I could help and engage with. But no matter what, there's always going to be naysayers that are backed up by nonsense, and that's nothing new. And I think, speaking to other NDEers, you can't be limited by what individuals may think or how they may engage with you if they're being negative. I was always very fortunate. I never really, in lack of better words, I never really cared what other people thought. It didn't concern me. I was really engaged with my integration, my healing, and being involved in the near-death community and IANS and other local chapters. And that's been really fantastic. And I would say, to anyone in that, you don't want to be limited by what people could say that don't agree with you. And you do have to know your audience. I'm selective on where I speak and where I go. I know that there are certain groups or communities that don't necessarily agree with that, and that's absolutely fine. I don't say I know everything. This is just my story, and I'm going to tell it as authentically as possible with the language we have to describe and move on. But you have to have some responsibility as yourself to know where you should be, speaking or who you're engaging with, and know your audience.
And I totally agree. And a lot of people that are watching you right now on this channel, they are spiritually being challenged. They're evolving, they're growing. Not that we all aren't, but some people are seeking, they're seeking answers, truth seekers. And I tell them, be careful who you talk to. There's certain people, you think, even in my own family, I love them, but they're just not into this. And I'm like, that's okay. And so you have to connect, you have to find your tribe, if you want to call it. But same thing with
and you have to meet people at their level. Not everyone is ready to hear all of this or agrees with it or understands it, and that's absolutely fine.
Right. And that's just where they are. And so that's okay. I will say that anyone that feels like they did have it, they're not sure, and or if they do know and they need some help with that, I will say that, that the IANS, the International Association of Near-Death Studies, that is a good place that they will make you, they did make me feel safe, and that you can talk about this because that is what that is about. So including spiritually transformative experiences. So there are places you can go. There are some afterlife places that you can go that people will listen and not naysay you. So let's go ahead and jump right in. However you want to take it. You said you were 24, and what were you doing? Yeah. Were you at a party? I know you said you were about the cake part. Where were you?
So I grew up in Long Island, New York. I was the oldest of, I have 2 younger brothers. Very American upbringing. I played lacrosse in high school. I was a lifeguard in the summers, and then I went to college in Hamden, Connecticut at Quinnipiac University and studied business administration. And I grew up, but I was in school with everyone that was very similar. We're all in the School of Business. We were all going into some careers, whether it be finance or something, and something along those lines. You went to Manhattan and did all that, and there wasn't really much spirituality. I always grew up with a sense of spirituality, but it wasn't really necessarily in my environment. Everyone was reading the Wall Street Journal every day. I think I was the only one that ever had crystals on their dorm desk. Yeah. So
You're helpful.
I always had my own little, bathroom.
Yeah, crystals.
I love my crystals. There's some behind me. You can see them.
I love my crystals.
Yeah. So I didn't come from a huge consciousness community background, but I have a very good awareness of it, and I was always intrigued. So then I graduated college, and I made my way out to Los Angeles, and I ended up going into real estate. And that was, I was in business, and I was just in LA for 6 months. And, to condense the story for this interview, I grew up with a peanut allergy. I always had EpiPens. 9 out of 10 times they were expired. I never had a massive reaction or an anaphylactic reaction. I was able to simply avoid them. And with anyone that has allergies, you obviously have your avoidance, but then there's times there's cross-contamination or there's accidents and moments. And, it's an average of, you eat 3 times a day, and that's thousands of meals a year and so on. And there's just chance that something can happen. And I was at a birthday party on a Sunday evening in Los Angeles, and everyone was hanging around. It was actually at a boutique hotel in Beverly Hills. And it was a very nice event. It was probably 35, 40 people, and it was casual, hanging out a Sunday evening. And they passed around cake, and I'm talking to people, and everyone just hands out the slice of the cake. And I took a little slice of it, on the fork. And I remember just eating it and then chewing it so quickly, but just that moment I've ate it and I swallowed it. And I don't know really what peanuts or nuts taste like. I have an idea what the smell is, and I really don't know the taste. I realized instantly something happened. I'm like, oh my God, is there a peanut in this cake?
You really? Did you know it intuitively, or was it like a body reaction?
It was a mixture of both.
Okay.
So in that moment.
Kind of knew.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the food, it's in there, but you don't see it. Or like even condiments, if you look, or even a lot of the foods, you'll look and there'll be trace peanuts.
Yeah, I think this is actually a peanut butter cake or a peanut cake. I really don't know. Just side note, I never, anyone at that party or even the young woman that it was her birthday party, they never knew the story. I never told anyone really what happened.
Are you serious? Okay, now hold up. So you're there, and you as a person are going, okay, crap, what's in here? Did you ask one and say, excuse me?
No, I kind of realized it when I was looking at it more, and then I just decided to grab like some Sprite. So I'm like, oh, the carbonated beverage of soda will help calm it down. Let me pop some Benadryl, I'll be okay. And that's that. Because I never had a
that sounds good.
Reaction. I'm sorry?
Well, that sounds good. That was a good try.
I was okay in that moment. And then I figured, okay, I'm going to go home. It's now 10:30, and I'll take a few more Benadryl and I'll just sleep this off. And this is the meat of the story where
I hear you.
I was okay. There wasn't a panic. There was an initial panic when I ingested the peanut. Then I didn't have it delayed. The reaction was, we later find out, a delayed anaphylactic reaction. And then I was home and I was laying in bed. I took 2 more Benadryl and I said, all right, I'm not getting to sleep. What's going on here? I'm a little itchy. Is my breathing okay? You start questioning all these things when you're laying there, or am I just anxious because I had the peanut and it's a Sunday night?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm going through all this in my head, and I get up and I'm like, oh, let me look for my EpiPen. So I look for my EpiPen, and shocking, it's expired and it's sitting there. I said, all right, I'll have it. And then I said, let me take 1 more Benadryl. And then I looked in the mirror, and I was really red. I had rash and hives all over my body, neck.
You were red?
Yes. So I was laying in bed. The light was off. I didn't really know. Then I'm starting to say, okay, this isn't getting better. And I'm doing the breathing. Is my breathing getting labored? Is it difficult? Is something? Am I wheezing? And then over the next half hour, a couple hours after this, ingesting the peanut, my breathing started to change. And that's when I realized, okay, this is not going to be take 2 Benadryl and wake up and go forward and be fine. So I'm then in my head.
And you never had anything to go this far. You never had to go this far, so you really so you never knew what to expect.
I didn't know what to expect. I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know how this would turn out. And I said, well, I have my epinephrine. It's expired. I don't know if it'll work. I can call an ambulance. I can take myself to the hospital. What am I doing right now? So in this time frame, it's becoming more and more difficult to breathe. And in my head, I'm weighing the options of what do I do now? What should I do? And I decided.
Were you alone at this point?
Yes.
Were you alone, Chris?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yes. So I was alone. So it wasn't like grab someone and have them drive. And again, this was a Sunday night. So I said, well, there's no traffic. I can get to the hospital in 10, 15 minutes or less.
Yeah.
So I ended up deciding to drive to the hospital. I'm driving, and just remember, and this whole NDE story is very difficult to tell because I'm using language to the best of the ability, and a lot of the experience when I go into the actual near death, you don't have the language for it. And I'm going to do my best to really pinpoint feelings, emotions, and what's happening. And I'm driving to the hospital, and my breathing is severely deteriorating every minute. And it feels like a minute's an hour is, too much time. And I barely get.
Was the hospital?
I'm sorry?
How far was the hospital? How far did you have to go?
4 miles, 5 miles. Maybe.
Oh God. Okay. All right. Go ahead. So every second it's getting worse.
Yeah, you're driving, and again, I was very fortunate. It was a Sunday night. There's little details in life and death situations that make all the difference. Hands down, the fact that was a Sunday night may have saved my life, or may have led to a very different outcome. So I get to the hospital and I pull in, and I guess there's like a valet. It's a little hazy at this point, and I remember going up into the ER to the intake desk, and the woman asked for my identification. So I pull out my wallet, and I'm trying to pull out my ID for identification, and I could not physically, my motor skills.
That's a bad sign.
Card out of my wallet, and then at that point, I remember the nurse and the other, the 2 nurses coming around taking me back to the ER, and I immediately was on the bed, and I was just at this point swarmed by the medical staff, and I was on oxygen, I was on Benadryl, I was on epinephrine, I had all of these. Everyone went to work on me, and I was fading very quickly. My oxygen levels were dropping to less than 10%. I was in full-blown anaphylaxis. I was not breathing. I was consciously aware that I was suffocating. And while in that, the concept of time really went away. Energy went away. I remember the doctor holding my mouth open, looking in my mouth. They were going to try and put a tube down because the epinephrine does not always work. EpiPens come in packs of 2, which are the injector of epinephrine, because you may need several doses, or they may not work. Or at a certain point, the anaphylaxis is so far and so intense, you cannot reverse. And that's what you're trying to do. So I was on all of this, and it was not stopping. I was not breathing. I was not communicating. And I remember just being so peaceful and this euphoric bliss, and questioning why the doctors were panicking and the nurses were panicking and all this was going on. And I remember thinking to myself, not that I wanted this thought or had this intention, but this acceptance that was washing over me of that I was dying. I was fading away. I knew I was dying. And that came when the doctor looked at me and he said, I'm sorry, I can't save your life. And that was when he, right after he was looking at trying to get a tube down my throat, but you couldn't because it was so closed off. So I don't know what they were going to do.
Right.
And they were starting to panic. I just remember looking his face of panic and despair looking at me, and I was really very calm. I remember just being like, okay, like, why is everyone panicking? And I was in this euphoric bliss. I was in this very euphoric bliss, this undescribable, and I use that, again, this is a situation where language is limiting to describe the situation. And I was greeted by my grandfathers who passed away, one in the 1960s and one in the early 1990s. So one I never had a relationship. One I was a very 2 years old when he passed, and it was very, they were just there, and nothing else was there. There was no, I wasn't in the hospital. I mean, I was in the hospital, but that consciousness was not there. I was withdrawing out. And I remember these ideas of, nothing material matters, love matters, and my grandfathers being there and saying, you can't die, you have work to do, it's not your time, you got to go back. And then, because up until that moment, I was okay, really. I wasn't fighting anything. Not that I wanted to die at all. I accepted in this euphoric bliss. There was nothing to fight. It was done. I couldn't fight anymore. I fought to get to the hospital. I fought, and then that was it. There was nothing left life force wise for me to continue. I just was laying there, suffocating, realizing it was happening, and I was on my way out. And, I'm in this euphoric bliss. And when that came in and that was said, I then remember almost like switching consciousness where okay, yeah, like having the dialogue. Okay, no, I can't die. I won't. No, I don't want to die. And then I remember saying that. And then in that moment, I came back. I remember just like that. And the pain came in, the intensity, the reality. I felt like I just woke up again in my body, in this consciousness, in that emergency room with the noise, the panic, the pain, the chaos, all of that just back in instantly, like rebirth. And yes.
Can I ask some questions right around this area? Because there's a lot of stuff right here. So first of all, I still can't get over the doctor's like, sorry. And you look at panic, that can't be a good thing. And the fact that you were in this euphoric thing, you ask yourself, what is it? Is that, whatever kicking in, is it a body thing kicking in? But it was also spiritual too, right? It wasn't just endorphins, was it? It was a spiritual thing happening as well, wasn't it? The peace.
Absolutely. I don't feel that was at all a medically induced feeling. It was a conscious feeling, and it was a spiritual. It was the process of dying. I was in a full-blown process of dying.
Did you feel when that happened? Because I just want to go, and again, you may not know, because in the years we're still trying to figure stuff out. I mean, because it's not just a moment of time that you would have here, but when you're between two worlds, I mean, it's a little bit more infinite. So did you feel that your soul either was expanding? You said because you're slipping away, but it sounds like you're expanding out. When your grandfathers showed up, were you seeing them from above the bed, or were you seeing it as yourself? What viewpoint did you see them, and did you see them as a solid?
It was in front, and it was like a telepathic communication. It was like waves of just knowing and that energy.
Got it. Waves of love. And did you ever go like above your body and look at it from different viewpoints or anything like that?
I had an out-of-body experience like that. Okay. I mean, consciously I was gone, but I was not looking down on my body like many NDS or operations.
No. It's all different. Everybody's different. Everybody's different. Even people that have had multiple ones, they're all different. So Okay, so your consciousness was expanding, and so it was a supernatural piece, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It sounds like the presence of God to me, but not to, that's pretty amazing. So when you said that you had the conversation with your grandfather saying, they said, "Oh, it's not your time," and you're like, "No, I don't want to go." Did you tell them that, or were you telling God that?
I would say them.
They can relate it back to God.
Yeah, yeah.
They're your advocates.
Or myself, or I said it. I just said it. That was verbal to communicate. I mean, there was a direct line of communication that we don't have on this physical planet, or how we normally communicate. It was
Right.
spiritual
I think,
communication.
right, which I want to get into that a little bit later too, and about the grandfathers. But okay, so when you so we'll have to go back to that spirit communication later on. So when your grandfathers, they were there, and did you get a sense of peace with them being there, or what was your thoughts of them? Oh, there they are.
Looking back, there was peace. I think it was just an unbelievable amount of chaos and pain and going and trauma in that moment. And then,
Yeah.
but while I was there was the euphoric bliss, and then that ended instantly, and I was back. And that when I came back, there was no NDE, there was no spirituality. It was a survival,
Bam.
trying to breathe and live. That's it. There was no, NDE after.
Wow.
And even an NDE or any of the spiritual components came in, weeks later. The initial, when I was in that hospital room, that was just a pure fight for survival, scraping to breathe and live. That was it. There was no loving rainbow moment at all in the hospital. It was pretty traumatic and violent. And
it sounds like it was a trauma. So, but when you said, yes, I want to live, then you're right back to all the chaos, right back to all the difficulty, you're right back. Wow. So, and at that moment, what started happening to pick things up in the emergency room? What happened at that point?
Well, I started being responsive. I was trying to breathe. I was gasping for air. I was moving my arms where I wasn't moving before. I was speaking. I was coming back to life, or fighting to. And that's when, they're like, "Oh, okay, he's coming back. We thought we lost him."
Right,
and
right.
And
So
then
right.
we just kept, more oxygen, more chemicals keeping me going. And then eventually, hours later, I got through the anaphylactic reaction. It just tapered down.
Wow. And I just can't, I'm thinking about this. One bite. One big bite.
The actual size of
crazy.
that must have been the quarter the size of an M&M. Quarter the size of an M&M.
That is
Minuscule.
crazy.
Minuscule.
But, honestly, about this reaction, anyone can develop an allergy to anything at any time, which is nuts.
Absolutely. And that's very dangerous for people that have always had allergies. They're aware of it, and they know what to do in situations, and they have that consciousness, whereas someone that may develop an allergy, and your allergies can also change in severity over years. Sometimes they are less, other times they become more severe over time, and you don't know what it's going to be. So you may take a little more liberty with something, or you may not be as cautious, and that could be very fatal. And
right. And I think that's important to mention, is that, I've heard people that are their whole life. Someone was telling me that that worked at an allergy clinic. Someone was 90 years old, and they all of a sudden developed a reaction to peanuts. I mean, it can happen. I actually 2 years ago ate peanuts my whole life. I had, Lance, Cheez-It crackers, toast cheese or whatever. One day I took it, my whole body turned whelps. I mean, huge whelps. Now, that's a gradient. The next one could not be so good, but it was substantially visible. And I'm like, oh, who knew? So it could happen really to anyone with any kind of thing. So I think it also says to be, as much as you can, to be mindful about what you put in your mouth, right?
Yeah.
And
it's knowing that, but also there's cross-contamination issues where something should not have peanuts, nuts, or peanuts products, and by accident it's in there.
Right. Or shellfish. Some people are highly allergic to shellfish. And I've heard that before. I've heard people say, oh, I've heard stories on that. So, and if you don't have an allergy, it can happen. So it's something that really what we're eating that, as much as we can be mindful. But I always, especially going on trips, not that it's the answer, but I always have Benadryl.
I carried in my wallet all the time.
Because you just don't know. You could be someplace and you could be some new ingredient you don't know, and you could have whatever. So, that it could be anything. Then this was what your thing was. So now you're 24, you come out of this. How long were you in the hospital for that? Were you just there for the day?
8 hours.
How long?
8-9 hours.
That's a long time. That was a fight. And this is one reason I think that near-death experiences don't want to talk about things, because yeah, it's life-changing, it's soulful, there's moments of wow, but it's trauma. It's not like they relish to talk about it.
Yeah, I was physically wrecked for days, where it was painful to just breathe and move for days. Then it took a month or two to really recover. I mean, the trauma to my body was significant. I couldn't get out of bed for a couple days.
Wow.
I couldn't breathe. Everything hurt. Everything. And there was a rebuilding process. And I always kept a journal since I was 14. So I was journaling a lot. And all this time I did, there's the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual components of an NDE. And I did not know what an NDE was. We didn't have that language. I didn't know there was a community. I didn't know what happened. I just knew that this trauma happened. And really, for the first week, it was, let me get out of bed. And then the second week, and then it was, all right, let me doing a little bit more. Let me move around. Let me get my body back. And then it was like, I have to rebuild. So there wasn't any understanding for probably, I think looking back, about 2 months until I realized I had a near-death experience and what happened. Then I dove into it. And then I started to realize what was happening, because there was, again, you're just in, let me physically get back. And then everything starts coming in of what happened. And then you have the after effects and the integration. But initially I had no idea what was going on. It was a physical first.
Wow. Well, people don't realize that too, when you've gone through something and it was such a fight, and it's a miracle that you're back. But it was the power of your intention. When they asked you, you went, yes, I want to go back. I'm not ready. So, I mean, that's, and the fact that you overcame so much and here you are, I'm like, wow, you were going to be such a force to be reckoned with, because you were supposed to be back. And that's one thing I always tell people, when it makes me sad when I see people that, I don't know, don't feel worthy or important or whatever it may be. And I'm thinking, look, God has you here right now. So it's obvious, very important that you're here, because if not, we would not come back. And so I love the fact that you co-created and saying yes, and here you are. So as you integrated and you had, first of all, your body, you had to get your body back up to speed and so forth. Did anyone in your family or friends know this happened?
It's a very good question. I mentioned I had an anaphylactic reaction to a peanut allergy, and that's all I said.
Got it. Okay. Well, and you're probably trying to process this too. So as it started coming out, did it come out in pieces? Did it come out?
Even for years, Tamara, I didn't talk about it. It wasn't something that was discussed ever. It just was not talked about, to kind of frame this of what was going on. So yes, people knew I had a reaction. There were some slight differences to me, but I never, ever went into any of the integration, the after effects, what was going on, what truly happened in the experience, or anything. It was, I had an anaphylactic reaction to a food allergy, period.
And that part was true, but you're right. There wasn't always, especially if you're the people that you were around didn't have information in this area, they wouldn't know. And you're 24. I mean, you probably, all this was not even on your radar. So what happened after you left there, as far as the spiritual side of things? Did you, how did you process this?
Well, I'm still processing it almost 9 years later.
Yeah. I know.
It's a lifetime. It's a lifetime.
Yeah, I was going to say, this keeps going, by the way.
I'm not looking for an end date. It's just continuing to process, evolve, and integrate. all of that.
I think it's, you know what, people that have had it years and years ago, I mean, I have mine, you know, a prenatal, but a 3, 4, 5, I'm still processing it. I'm still processing it. So, because I'm processing it in different layers, and at least you have a safe place to be able to talk about it where you can process it. So when did you, because here you are now speaking out, what are some of the things that you notice? I don't know if we should go into integrations or after effects, however you feel what you want to take first.
I'm open to anything, but I would say that going off what you just said, you know, the main reason with regards to the integration, I was doing anything and everything spiritually in Los Angeles, from sweat lodge, sound bath, Reiki, yoga, crystal, all of that. And the NDE integration, or whatever word you want to throw in there, yourself and evolving and growing, is lifelong. And some modalities work, some work better than others, some don't resonate at all. And there was always this process, even now, everything is still to present moment of what works for this time, that, what is going to help. And the reason I'm here speaking with you right now is I was not able to talk about this. And
I understand.
I had an opportunity to speak about it, and then I ended up doing the video with Anthony Shen, and I had a great response. And what I never realized, and I guess this is true with social media, I'm very easy to find. And I have had many people over the last 8 months reach out to me all over the world, and they've resonated with what I speak about and my story, and it's helped them. And it's been parents that have lost children, individuals that had near-death experiences, people that are dealing with anything and everything you could imagine that is a hard challenge, emotionally, physically, mentally, in this world. And it's been really rewarding for me in 2 ways. One, to be able to give back and have someone say, hey, I've been struggling with depression, or my mother or my child died, and hearing your video has really helped me understand. And they pull something from that that's healing and brings them peace and comfort. There's that. And then for myself to actually speak about this and process it and verbalize it and connect with others has been very therapeutic, healing, and integrating for me as well. And that's what brings me to this point. But it took, again, I stress it, 8.5 years, which is a third of my life. You know, it's, you know, to discuss this.
You've done better than I have. I didn't come out to much later in life. It was not safe for me. I did not feel. So you think of, you're way ahead of the game. I think the average 7.5 years for someone to come out, it took me most of my life. I guess I'm hard-headed, and Spirit said it's time to open up to some things, but because it is, you know, it is a sacred thing, and you are trying to process it. And it sounds like that you had a spiritual community of at least open people that
I did. I was in, you know, Santa Monica, Venice, and I really love the consciousness community there. And, you know, now so much, I mean, I went from that, and then I relocated to Florida this year. Everything is now digital. So I'm all over. We're on Zoom. I'm on all these different media channels, and it's really been fantastic because I'm sitting here and you're in North Carolina, and we're able to be broadcast across the country and the world. And and I've realized that when I have people reach out via Facebook, or they find my phone number and they just call or text me, and they're all over the country, they're all over the world. And it's been really a beautiful side thread to this past 2020 with COVID and lockdowns and global pandemic, to find community and individuals all over and share that way. So I always try and look for the best. I know it's a little cliche, but
absolutely.
It's a good focus to have. And there's always something, even in, you know, I take this near-death experience, which was challenge. It was the actual event was traumatic, painful, and awful. Then the integration of it being challenging. For 6 months I did not know who I was with regards to my identity, feelings, and behaviors. You grow up a certain way, then you have this traumatic event within one night and then you're out and you're spit out. You don't even want to know what happened. And now you're integrating a new theory. You have new beliefs. You have new feelings. You have, heightened senses. I was always very intuitive, but after the NDE and even now, my intuition has been very high. And you're relearning, and you're trying to understand who you are and how your relationship to the world and your relationship with the world and people and community around you. And that's very difficult because not only was I entering adulthood, I was entering adulthood on top of, here's a whole new consciousness. Like I had in several journal posts within several months after my NDE, in bold letters, my consciousness has changed. It has shifted across. And that was what I came up with. There wasn't much else to elaborate on. I'm just like, I don't know. It's different. Something else is off. I'm a different consciousness. That's all I can tell you. I'm still figuring all this out. Even now, I still am. So it's been a challenge.
Well, sure. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, anyone who's 24, I mean, most people you would think it's 24. I mean, yeah, there's things they're determined. They want to make it in life. They want to do things but then they have their friends. Friends are big, in your 20s, and you want to go hang out and party and do what 24-year-olds do. And then here you had this heavy thing that you're basically went through yourself and carried yourself. So now you're forced to really look at some deep topics and deep parts of yourself. You're that it's right there. So that most people don't have to. How do you think that affected you from developing and I mean, you're grown up now, but growing up, you didn't have the luxury of just checking out mentally and having fun because you had to deal with this. How do you think it made you different from people your own age?
Well, you have your 20s and you choose the life you're going to live and you live accordingly. That's a hard question to answer because I'm still in the process of that. But, life with an NDE changes drastically. And you could be on a certain path, or a lot of your friends and family are on a certain path, and then you just get thrown off that path overnight. So I'm still doing that. My focus is to live as authentically as I can. And I feel I do that, and I continue to do that, and I do what works for me, and I'm open to change. And it's been a process, and it was difficult integrating. Fortunately, I never had a community influence or individual influence that was negative. Again, I really didn't.
Yeah, that's good.
I did my own thing, and I lived in LA, and it's a little bit of a crazy town, so it kind of just functioned. And
I hear you.
Going off that, you learn to live for yourself. It's hard to put words into this, and I don't want to cheapen it by words, but you live authentically.
I don't think you are.
From what I've experienced for myself, again, with an NDE, and in my case, I look at anything and everything and say, I suffocated to death alone at 24. And
that sucks.
Whatever else I'm dealing with, my behavior is just kind of like, I want to use something. It's a little flippant. It's like, I've gone so much further. I've pushed that envelope. I've done it. Stress, this, that, any other issue you're dealing with, when you've gone to drink and crossed it a little
minuscule.
Or things, you have a different relationship with life and the universe around you when you've done that, and what you want out of your life. Having, when that you are so grateful and fortunate to be here. I should have never walked out of that hospital alone. I should have never walked out of there without being handicapped.
It's a miracle. You're a miracle.
And, I carry that with me. I carry, you often hear about people carrying a burden. I carry the gratitude that I shouldn't be here.
You're a miracle.
And,
absolutely.
And that's what, motivates me, and that's what, gets me to do these and, giving back. And I don't know exactly why I had to come back, and I feel that will maybe present itself. It may not, but I'm going to live authentically, and I'm going to give back. And now that I can share, because this is a very niche topic we're discussing in a niche
It
community
is.
that is relatable by anyone that doesn't have to. You don't have to have an NDE to relate to what we're discussing about, or
Oh,
to
absolutely.
get some
No,
knowledge,
absolutely
or
not. Yeah.
to get something beneficial out of it. And I find a lot of comfort and peace in being able to share. And if that's what I came back, and that I said, that's my down payment, and like my monthly, rent I'm paying on earth, is to speak and help others and talk about this topic. And there's not many people that are male speaking about this. And there's not many that are in the business world still functioning. And I'm still, I still pay bills, I still make money, I still
Right.
want to do things and want to do, all of that. And also being my age, I just turned 33. There's not many people, I don't really know any that are under 45 and that speak about near-death experiences or consciousness and spirituality, and are still grounded and or
Right.
living and making their life in this world daily. So
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And and even the age that that this happened to you and processing it is different. It was funny. You were talking about speaking out, your down payment is cute. David Bennett, who's been on this channel, and amazing interview, but he said, when he finally came out and he said, okay, I'll start talking about this. He goes, but he told Spirit, I'll only talk about this, or God, whatever. I'll only talk about this unless people approach me. And he said, oh gosh. And then they still kept coming. And he could see that's still his philosophy. If people ask him, that he, unless there's some big reason, he talks about it, because that's his gratitude, back. And as you talk about it, I'm sure it will evolve. And as you're evolving, speaking about it, there was something that I wanted to mention to you that might resonate with you, that is cool. People that have had, near-death experiences kind of live in this magical world, because they're connected to, I guess, the other side more. They're tapped in. Would you agree? Tapped in more to the other side?
We discussed a little bit before, and I know you are the Southern Belle Medium. I have mediumship ability and psychic ability. I'm very intuitive, and that's something that I work with daily. I've worked with groups. I've worked one-on-one with private teachers to sharpen that skill, and I use that day to day. And
I commend you for that. I commend you for that.
Thank you.
Because some people,
it's open, but it becomes the new normal, because it's been like that for now 8 years, and I'm okay with that. It feels comfortable. And you do something all the time, it's just kind of like, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I understand. Now, I want to go back to the after effects, and we're talking about opening yourself to the spirit world and the mediumship abilities. Now, I know that PMH Atwater wrote about this in one of the Ein's journal, but about spontaneous mediumship. So some people, no matter what age, you could go through your whole life, have family, everything, and then you have something happen, and then, kind of opens that spiritual door, and then you have what they call spontaneous mediumship. And it's where they sense spirit around and so forth. Some get conversations, but the fact that you're taking it to actually learn how to master this, and who is there, what is the discernment, the differences, I'm just telling you, makes a huge difference, because I also came back. Well, mine was early, really at 3 it opened up, that I can recall really seeing the spirit people, but I try to make it go away. But when I got called in for service, I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do a really good job for people's family and for them. So I thought, I'm going to take this out to excellence, and to learn the differences and different energies, and to really commit to it. Very few people do. And I'll tell you, it makes all the difference when you study, especially in the evidential mediumship. So I really commend you for doing that, because it shows a level of excellence. And that's how I take everything. Doesn't matter, what it is, whatever I learn and pursue, I'm going to do it to the best. And it's to me, the highest level of a compliment. I guess I look at it as I feel appreciative to be able to present people's sacred messages to them, and I look at it as holy. And the fact that you're doing that, I have tremendous respect for you.
Thank you. Yeah, one thing I recently just started dabbling into, because it kind of came up organically when I was in a group, was the Akashic records.
Yeah, that's fun.
records pretty well. I didn't realize that, but I went into that about a couple of weeks ago. I was in a group and I just dove right in and I just started reading, and that was Akashic record reading.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I do, it's funny, that's available to us. It's another level. And, you have the level of empathic, people feel things, and psychic, this world and medium. But as you go up and as you channel, you're really tapping, if you tap into and there's different portals, but if you tap into the higher levels of stuff, you're going to tap into, what do they call it? Your book of life, your Akashic record. You're going to tap into that. You're going to tap into not psychic, but that higher level information, which is actually an ability. So well done.
Yeah, it's cool.
I told you you're going places. But you know what? What's beautiful is that you've accepted the challenge, and here's the magical unicorn ride as you see where this goes. And you don't know. And think about the young people you could talk to. Let me just mention this to you because I think you might find it interesting. I was at a restaurant with my Ein Charlotte group probably 3 years ago, and it was a beautiful day. So we sat outside over the canopy, and this fella he was our server. And I don't know, we had like 25 people. We had a big table. And he was another person in him, but he kept busting his butt. And I would say he was early 20s, and he was busting his butt. He kept coming by, wanting to talk to us. And a couple of the people, especially the guys, go, "This guy's a go-getter, man. I mean, this guy's really sharp. What's the deal?" So when everybody kind of left, and there was only like 4 people left, and we said, "Hey, what's your deal?" We started talking to him. And he said, "I've been overhearing what you've been saying about this thing, near-death experience." And he kind of went like this. He said, "I've never told anyone." So, and I said, he said, "I can't talk now. I'm working." I said, "Do you have a break?" He said, "I have a break in 10 minutes." I said, "Okay." So he came back and sat with us. I said, "Whatever you have to say, it's totally safe here, and we will not think you're crazy." And he said, "Yeah, I know." So he sat down, and it happened when he was 22, and it was some guy friends, and they went out surfing and water sports, and the tide came such a way that it took one of them under, and he tried to rescue him, and he himself was drinking the ocean water and had a near-death experience. And he said it was horrible. It was burning his lungs, and he went through the whole thing. And he said, now his friend comes to him, but he doesn't know how to tell the mom that it's okay. So we had this whole experience, and his friend came through to him, and he was validated. He's never had any person to talk to. I mean, imagine, you have coaches, right, in football, but imagine all the young people that don't really have mentors. There are people of all ages that have a near death, or a near doesn't mean you have to be code blue. It could be, it could not be, or a spiritually transformative experience they cannot understand. For example, showing up in their dad.
It's very niche, and there are a select few people that can really listen and understand where that individual is coming from. And it's different if it's, say, a mental health professional versus an ND experiencer themselves. It's a different energy. It's a different understanding. And you kind of pick up on that when you've been in a group setting with, some of the most powerful moments I've had in the NDE community have been at a experiencer lounge where there's 8 people sitting in a room, and every person has had a near-death experience. That is a very unique energy, situation, understanding. I mean, I don't even have to say a word in there, and you all know what's going on. So it's
you link in.
powerful.
You link in. Like I said, you don't want to like link into people if they don't want you to, but there's such a love, I'd say it a love fest, but like when you're around, and we had talked about this pre-interview, when you're around other near-death experiencers, there's, and generally, not always, but usually an energy that comes with that is kind of euphoric, and you just have an understanding, which is why I wanted to have this channel, from me, who's a near-death experiencer, for other near-death experiencers, because I can kind of tune and see what they are at that moment ready to talk about, not talk about, support them, encourage them to be the best that they can be, because we all came back for a reason. So I encourage that, and I know it's difficult, but I think about this little fella at the restaurant, and I think, what a fluke. Oh, look how God and spirit works. It's not a fluke. But this guy now is like, I'm not crazy. And who knows where he, went on, to help people and what he's done. And then what about the people that are going to hear this, that hear you, and about being vulnerable? It's hard to be vulnerable and say, yeah, I'm still working through it. But that's human. That's the human quality. Let's talk about, when did you start seeing? I know you mentioned your grandfathers. So I definitely know, and already, they're part of your helpers. They're it's funny. We have family, and that's why we say we have a fan club in heaven. But we have family that is so supportive and loving on the other side for us, and we have such a big team. Tell me about that relationship, because I know it didn't end with that. I know they're around you a lot. So do you still talk to them or feel their presence or communicate? Because I know you have mediumistic abilities.
Yeah, it's really, the best way I could sum that up is all my grandparents are deceased, but there are moments where I don't feel that they are deceased. I would think like, oh, I was with them yesterday and they passed away.
You were my people. You were my people.
I don't really feel like, they're physically gone, but it doesn't really feel, I don't really know what else to compare it to, other than I don't think they're really gone. They're not physically there, but they're almost, in a way, when you have mediumship ability, like, you physically feel them. Like, you kind of, if you can have a communication, or they're there, like your relationship, without the NDE world and mediumship and all that spirit, what is your relationship when someone passes away? Are they gone forever and that's that? Or is it just a different format in which you communicate and engage with them? And I really feel, in my layman terms, that I have a different format in which I can engage with deceased relatives of mine, and I just look at it differently. And I don't look at death as final. That's consciousness lives on. You can communicate, you have that spirit connection. And, but that's very easy for me to operate like that, because I can tap into that. Now, if someone can't, or they don't believe it, or they don't want to, and they're putting in self-limiting beliefs, and they're not even open to a different point of view,
most likely,
I can't do much for them. But that's not limiting me. I don't ever want to, one of my themes is I never want to limit myself in any capacity, because what you think is right and what you believe is right and is right usually turns out not to be, and you evolve more. I can't tell you how many times I've been wrong, a lot more than I've ever been right. But knowing that,
big person admit that.
And knowing that, I'm open to, hey, whatever we think now is probably going to change when we have more information, or I look at something differently. So I love
that. I love that. Go back on that. That's awesome, because you know what? That's awesome. What you know now to be true, later on you go, well, I was wrong. It's either more like this, or there's a lot more to that. I noticed that with me too, with my learning. I'll go, wow, there's so much more I didn't see with that. But I don't know if they're even wrong. Sometimes I'm wrong. But
yeah, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with being wrong. The key is not being wrong or not taking a chance. It's one, realizing you need to change direction, and two, doing something. And again, I fall back on, I already suffocated to death alone. Like, I'm okay with things not working out, because I know I've been down that road before, and I will eventually figure it out. But I got to start somewhere. I'm going to do my best ability in this decision, and then see what happens, and we'll recalibrate, pivot, adjust, whatever that may be, or you have to throw it all out. But that's kind of life, and
it is life.
Growth. And I can say the best things that have ever happened really just kind of happened organically, or I didn't have, I always joke around. I said the one time you don't want to go out on a date is the person you end up spending years with, and the one you think it's going to work great with, they never text you back. So I'm just like, get out of my way in everything. I'm out of my way in my life, personal, business. I said, get out of the way and let the universe kind of handle it. Because that's what kept me alive. And I trust the universe. And again, we kind of humans really complicate their lives and get in their own way. I always try and shut down the conscious active mind and say, well, what's really going on? Let me make the best intuitive based decision for right now, and go from there. So that takes years, and you have to just be humble enough to know, hey, this might not be right, or it might be right. And if it was, hey, you know what? It was, some of it may have been skill, a lot of it may have been luck, or just by sheer chance with you happen to be in the right place at the right time. So open to all of that.
Well, I think what you're saying is it's so cute. You're going, well, I don't really know exactly why I'm here. Just about what you said right there is just a bucket of wisdom, because so many people are like, how do I get to be spiritual? How do I do it? I said, you don't have to do, here's the easy thing. You don't need to do anything. You need to surrender and say, hey, thanks for my breath. I'm here. Okay, what's next? I'm waiting. I mean, right? But it's that surrender. We want to control everything. And I look at who I was when I owned my advertising agency. Yeah, I did that whole thing and whatever for years. And I still use those skills and so forth now, but I used to have plans and this and control everything. And now my plan is I'm going to wait till you tell me what to do next. And it's so counter to the world, but you're right. You're talking about getting out of the way. It's allowing the magic to happen in your life and allowing you to be
And be open. You have to allow it. When it comes in, you have to accept it. And you have to be open to things unfolding. And that's very hard. This is not easy for me. This took many years. I'm still working on it. I'm still sometimes trying to force a square peg in a round hole. And that's just how we do things.
No, you're years ahead of me. I think when I was your age, I sound like an old. When I was your age, I mean, I was going to the fancy bars and taking clients there and partying. I mean, you're way ahead of me. That's why I laugh and I go, really? You picked me? Okay, they had to wait for me, and I'm like, God bless you. Thanks for waiting for me to snap out of it. But I think that God works with everybody. He wants real people. And we can all connect with somebody, and I think that your message it's practical, it's hands-on. It's not just about the near-death experience, but it is about the processing of it. It's about you, which is kind of personal. It's kind of awkward, like, okay, I'll tell you what I think. It really is revealing, because so much in life, I think we have social niceties. And now here we're going to reveal our stuff. It's like not like a Jerry Springer, but like, this is how I feel about stuff. And that's the soulful things that really count. And I think that if it does something bigger here, Chris, if people can look at you and say, this guy, he's tough, he hangs in there, he's embracing his life, he doesn't even know what's next, he's embracing it, then maybe I can have the courage to do that too, because I'm not really happy with my life.
Yeah, I 1,000% agree with what you're saying. I've realized from doing, media now and getting out there and speaking and hearing back from, individuals all over the world of every background, every type, everyone pulls something different from these conversations. Everyone, it's across the board. And I do as much as I can, because you never know who's going to listen. And when it first happened, I said, if I can help one person, it's worth it. And that is my goal. And then I said, if I can help 2, we'll do it. And if I could help 1,000, well, then 10,000. But I started with one person. I said, if one person gets anything from it, it's worth it. And that's where I started. I started with that. And then it was all I just kept going and going. And that's where I am now. I just going to keep going. And I don't know exactly what will happen. And I'm open, and I'm just getting better at speaking and engaging and talking. You are of the NDE, because there's so many different. There's the story, but then there's so many others. Little tentacles that go off that can be discussed about it, and it can be resonated. In every interview, I say something different that someone may hear, or they may hear it at a different point in their life, and they may just interpret it differently. And there's healing from that. And the more I can do, that's what motivates me. I'm paying rent on that.
And I think there's also what you're saying is the fact is that there is a, from what I see here, an intention, and me too, but an intention to be of service.
Yes.
That's why,
absolutely.
Yeah. And that's why you're committing to the level of spirit, which, me as well. I spent 8 years in training, very extensively, because I care, I want to make sure that, that I do the best job I can. And, with that said, you don't want to have a perfection, perfection anxiety. I mean, you do the best, and then you go out there and you just do whatever. But I think that, that with you setting an intention to be of service, and then letting God and spirit, whatever you want to call it, work through you to let that happen. I think that's how that we're all supposed to really truly work. I think we're supposed to be connected. I think when we lose our connection, source, higher self, whatever you want to call it, that it's not so good. It goes so much smoother.
Yeah, I think people feel that possibly if there's discontent in life, which there is. And, sometimes, there's different ways of dealing with that. But, being in service and gratitude and kindness really helps move the needle in the right direction.
It sounds easy. It's not necessarily easy. Because say that last part again.
Doesn't cost a thing.
Oh, you bleeped out. Say it one more time.
It doesn't cost a thing.
No, it costs your time, but it costs, more importantly, your heart, to share your heart. And it's not always been safe to do with people, but I think being of service is that you are the blessing. You are the blessing. So I can't wait to see all the things you're going to do to continue to grow. We've talked about, to kind of wrap up, we've talked about the integration. You're still working through that. The fact it's just a trauma in itself, and that, having to process it so early on. But it's interesting. You're going to be brought the people, and there's usually one at a time. You're going to be brought the people that need to hear what you need to hear, like that fella. So you have no idea. That's what's so exciting, is all the things that's going to be lined up that you're going to be able to do to help people. But if we're just willing to just kind of go, okay, and just submit and say, okay, well, what is it that can carry us so far? So the fact that you were spoken out so much already, I think there was one thing there was a couple things I wanted to cover. What was the hardest integration and challenge that you've had to date with this whole thing?
That's a great question. Overall, the integration had its challenges, but more specifically, initially and several years after was, well, I want to go back. The not knowing and redeveloping my identity 6 months to 8 months after my near-death experience was very challenging. And then, from there, that then turned into, well, the bigger question was, what am I going to do career-wise? What fulfills me? What used to fulfill me doesn't.
Okay, give an example. Can you give a little baby example?
Absolutely. So I went to, I studied business, and my goal was to just make a ton of money and do whatever I wanted. And that, and you find happiness or content, or that's what you want, and that's the path you're on and what you've been going towards and working towards, then all of a sudden that has no meaning to you. And it wasn't like I spent 20 years developing and meditating to say, oh, I don't want that. It happened overnight.
Get it?
Severity of a lot of that.
It sort of sucks because it makes it hard integrating into the world, but join the club. One of the top things that comes out with near-death experiences is that they could have been all about making the money and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, go, make it happen. And then when they wake up, it could be a spiritually transformative experience. Whatever, what could that be? I don't know, seeing your grandparents in front of you or whatever. Who knows what it is?
Yeah.
They don't want it. They don't care about that. Their values change. They don't care. They just want to be of service.
And values change. And then to follow up on that, the second part is, I still need to be able to function and live the life I would like, and to be in service and help others, and finding that balance. Right. So the one step further is, what is the balance? Because I'm still in this world. You still have to function and
you still have to pay for your rent, your food, and whatever.
And I enjoy business. I enjoy that challenge and production and all of that. And you want to find the right balance. So that's a challenge. Everything has to get rebalanced.
I love this. You could do a topic just on this. How would you like to come back and do something just on balance? I'm serious.
I'm always here.
I think you'd be great.
We're texting
and
emailing buddies now, so just shoot me a text. I'm around.
Yeah, but seriously, people need to know that. And I see this is something you're currently working on a lot. But I tell you what, it's the biggest thing with just anyone, if you're human, and especially people that are especially through the COVID. A lot of people are waking up. They're going through a shift. It's almost like Let's say it again, Chris.
It's been a very, very heavy year where people have been challenged, and it wasn't anticipated. And a lot of people didn't want to deal with a lot, and they were forced to. And
Exactly.
you make the most of it. There's always going to be a balance of it. Is it a positive or negative? And you have to have, we talk about balance, but also synergy. And I feel, not that we can go into this on another episode.
Yeah, I want to.
Information out there and a lot of opinions, and a lot of it's not really applicable. And I don't feel a lot of it really takes into account any spirituality, which is a major component. And we are more medicated than ever. We are more burdened than ever. We have more luxury, wealth than ever. Yet we are more unhappy than ever. We are more
That's true.
Sicker than ever. The list goes on and on. It's not supposed to be like that.
I mean,
missing in this formula.
I love how you're just straightforward and talk, but you're absolutely right. And balance, I think, even our term of what balance is, but I feel like the whole world has gone through a midlife crisis and a mental breakdown, because they were like, I even look at myself before, and I was like a little squirrel with nuts. I was always going, I'm like, where the heck was I going? Why was I so busy? Now I'm busier than ever, but in a more productive way, and also in a way that's more soulful, and a way that also acknowledge myself and take the time off and so forth. But I think people are looking, you're right, they're faced to, if they, have kids, they actually have to parent now. Some people are in relationships, they don't like them. They're stuck in the house with them. They need to, decide what they want to do about that and honor them in some way.
Once COVID's over, there's a lot of decisions that have to be made.
Yeah, is that not true? And so to me, I think it's positive, because it's only bringing to the surface what was there already. And so people are, it's going to free a lot of people, and they just need to know the proper steps. And again, everything in love, but people that you work together and say, look, so-and-so, apparently we're different. I'll always support you and love you, or they're going to work it out. But even in their own self and their own right, there are plenty of people that are doing things that don't align. With that said, I will tell you the other part of balance, and this is for you to make a mental note to talk about too, okay? Is that, and I would love to have your feedback, but many people in the spiritual community, which you've been a part of way back, the spiritual community and near-death experiences, there's a lot of spiritual people surrounding shamans, Reiki people, healers, mediums, psychics, all this, okay? I left out a ton of people, I'm sure. But they feel as though that you should not make any money. It should be all service. I do a lot of charity. I do a lot of service. But at the same time, we have to eat, and you want to be fair about it. So it's really back to balance. And I think it has to do with, it's a balance with everything. It's balance with your life. But I see that, people that have decided to leave their corporate world, and they want to maybe teach or be a coach or whatever, that a lot of times they are reprimanded for that, to be able to take that. But I think that if your passion is helping others, you should be able to do it full time. What are your thoughts on that? Have you heard this yet?
I haven't yet, but I've been involved in the community, the spiritual community, pre and post NDE, and I think it's a case by case basis. I think there are I think there are people of varying skill that maybe shouldn't be healers, that aren't, or whatever it may be. I think it's first. I don't think anyone should be telling anyone what they should or shouldn't do or charge.
That's the bottom. That's the bottom line.
Really, they need to worry about themselves, and that least of their concern is what someone does to sustain themselves if they're out there healing. And you know what? The community will decide if that person is fantastic and they charge a fee. Great. If they can't and it doesn't work and they go back to whatever else and they want it as a hobby, that's fine. But I don't feel anyone should tell anyone what they can and can't do.
Beautiful response. And because I get people coming to me crying. I get people crying and go, Bubba, I said, well, it's okay. You can, there's no, people like what you have, they'll pay for it according to what's fair. It's okay.
Yeah, and to add to that, if someone does have something, it's usually not about that person. It's something about them, that if they're projecting on someone else, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. That's true. That's okay. not have to do with the individual that's looking to do something.
So Chris, are you a baby Buddha? Because I totally agree with you 100%. It's funny, I've been getting this lesson lately. I'm in the middle of the lesson, so I don't know it all. But it's Jesus, because I talked to a lot of people, but I saw him over there, and he's been talking about judgment and about labeling, and there's a lot's going on here. And he said that when people judge other people, they're actually judging that part of themselves, and it limits themselves in their spiritual journey by judging other people.
I think that's true. I think anything you judge in someone else is a reflection on you, and
That's what he
something
said.
you may not want to address. There's always some other issues, with judgment. Now, there is some judgment. You don't want to cross the street. If a bus is coming, you're going to get hit by a car. If it's raining, you want to bring a raincoat. Judgment's okay. I mean, I like to say this. I have my preference, and I don't judge. And I think we sometimes, sometimes there's a situation of having a preference and then having a negative judgment or acting on that negatively. But I have my preference on things. There's things I like, there's things I don't like. And I keep, that's it. And I'm not judging. I'm just saying, hey, this works for me. It doesn't. I have my preference. You do what you have to do. And I think we're very concerned with other people, and yet we don't really deal with ourselves and focus on that.
Yes. Can I say amen right now? Yeah. Everybody's so worried about everybody. You need to worry about yourself. Right. Mm-hmm. And then, and what I just don't understand. We got really confused somewhere along the line. Let people do what they like, and and you do what you like, and it's all good. Yep. Right.
And that's none of my business.
What is it? What you do is none of my business, or what I do, what you think what I do is none of my business. I don't know. But yeah, I think balance would be good, because it really is layered in what we're talking about. And it's about releasing yourself from, what did you say, preconceived ideas that don't fit you anymore or fit other people. So it can allow you to be free to move on. But I tell you what, the after effects with you and your cognitions are amazing. I just encourage you to keep being authentic, and because that will encourage others to be authentic. And I love how you say, look, I don't always have it right, because that's authentic. None of us do, but we try. That's all we can do. And then, and that changes. And that's what we're here. We're morphing, we're changing. So thank you for having the courage to step out. I can't wait to see all the things you want to do. And I do want to have you back on balance, synergy, and love. So be thinking about that, because I want you to.
I love it. It'll be so much fun.
Yeah, it will be fun, because I think people need to hear that. And that's especially now, a lot of change is going to start happening. And I think in the spring, things are going to open up a lot more, and people are going to need to know how to integrate back into this world, but they're not going to do it the way they did before. So maybe we can help them a little bit.
Wonderful.
Well, Chris, you have been a joy. I can't wait to hear more what you're doing. I'm really proud of you. Even though I've only met you 2 months ago, I'm really proud of you just stepping out and just doing it. I mean, that's impressive. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having the platform for me to do this.
Are you kidding? You are so welcome. And I'm trying to build a soul community so people can feel that there is a safe place, and that we can learn and grow together, because we're all evolving. So thank you so much for being on the show, and we will be talking very soon.
Yep. Take care, Tamara. Thank you.
Thank you.